I'm about to tell you a story I've never shared publicly. It's about a disastrous project presentation, a near panic attack, and the crushing feeling that I was a complete fraud who was about to get fired from my first remote job. It was a moment where I felt the cold, hard certainty that I just wasn't cut out for my career. But what I didn't know then was that this moment of absolute failure would become the unexpected catalyst for building a practical system for unshakable self-belief. And it turns out I wasn't alone. Studies show that the prevalence of imposter syndrome can be as high as 62% in some professional groups, making people feel like their success is just a fluke. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I went from being one of them to building a confidence that doesn't break, step by step. 2 years ago, I landed what I thought was my dream job. It was my first fully remote position, and on paper, it was perfect. The reality? I spent every single day terrified. My entire life felt like a tightrope walk where I was just trying not to get found out. Every Slack message from my manager made my heart pound. Every calendar invite for a new meeting felt like a summons to my own execution. I was living in a state of constant low-grade anxiety, and the isolation of remote work made it 1,000 times worse. There were no casual chats by the coffee machine to gauge the team's mood, no body language to read in a meeting to know if my ideas were landing. It was just me, my laptop, and my own spiraling thoughts. This isn't an uncommon feeling in one 2024 report. 60% of workers reported problems with miscommunication and disconnection. I felt that deeply. I would reread my own emails a dozen times, agonizing over a single word, convinced I sounded like an idiot. My days were a frantic ballet of Googling basic terminology during Zoom calls, nodding along as if I knew what was happening, and then spending hours after work just trying to catch up on what I'd pretended to understand. I was convinced that everyone else on my team was a certified genius and that a hiring manager had made a catastrophic error in judgment by letting me through the door. I wasn't just feeling a little self-doubt, felt like a complete and utter fraud. It's feeling this belief that you're not really qualified and that you'll be discovered as a fake is a classic sign of imposter syndrome. And I had it bad. The peak of this terror came about 6 months into the job. I was tasked with presenting the results of a quarter-long project to the entire leadership team. This was my chance, I thought, to finally prove that I belonged. So I did what any insecure overachiever does. I over-prepared to the point of self-destruction. I spent weeks creating a 70-slide deck for what should have been a 20-minute presentation. I wrote a script and memorized it verbatim. I practiced it in front of my mirror, in the shower, while making coffee. I was a machine, ready to deliver a flawless performance. The day of the presentation arrived. The Zoom room filled up with all the important faces, VPs, directors, the CEO. I took a deep breath, shared my screen, and began. For the first 2 minutes, it was perfect. I was a robot reciting my lines. Then it happened. My Wi-Fi flickered for just a second. The screen share froze. When it came back, my meticulously organized speaker notes had vanished, and so had my brain. I completely blanked. The script I had tattooed onto my memory was just gone. All I could hear was the blood pounding in my ears. I started stammering, trying to find my place, jumping from slide 5 to slide 27, then back to 12. The narrative was gone. The data made no sense out of order. I could see the faces on the screen shift from polite attention to confusion and then to pity. The next 10 minutes were the most excruciating of my professional life. I clumsily clicked through the slides, mumbling apologies, my voice shaking. When I finally finished, there was just silence. That dead, hollow Zoom silence that's so much louder than any actual noise. Someone eventually said, ... thanks for that. We'll have to circle back later. I closed my laptop, walked into my living room, and just stood there, completely numb. I had failed. not in a small, recoverable way, but in a spectacular, public, career-ending fashion. I was sure that a Slack message firing me was only minutes away. That night, I didn't just feel like a fraud, I believed it. The firing message never came. In fact, nothing happened. The next day was business as usual, which was almost worse. I was just living in the wreckage of my own failure, waiting for the other shoe to drop. The fear was paralyzing. It's that kind of fear that shuts you down and makes you want to avoid any and all future challenges. After a week of this mental torture, something inside me broke. I was at rock bottom and I realized I had two choices. I could quit this job and probably every future job the second it got hard, or I could figure out what actually went wrong and fix it. And that's when I had my aha moment. The problem wasn't the presentation. The problem was my obsession with feeling confident. I had poured all my energy into trying to perform confidence, to project an image of someone who had all the answers. But I'd spent no time on the one thing that actually creates it. My disastrous presentation taught me the most important lesson of my career. Confidence isn't a prerequisite for success. It's the result of it. You don't start by feeling confident. You start by becoming competent. Genuine self-belief doesn't come from affirmations or faking it till you make it. It grows from the solid ground of proven skills and abilities. I decided right then to stop trying to feel confident and start building a case for it. So, I developed a practical, 3-step system. This isn't magic, it's a discipline, but it fundamentally changed how I see myself and my work. My first move was to fight my feelings with facts. I was drowning in the feeling of being a failure, so I needed cold, hard evidence to prove myself wrong. I bought a simple notebook and wrote evidence log on the cover. Every single day before I closed my laptop, I had to write down one thing, just one that I did right. Some days it was small, like I answered a tricky question in a meeting without panicking. Other days it was bigger, like the report I submitted got positive feedback. I wrote down compliments from colleagues, successful projects, and problems I solved. This practice is a way to actively combat irrational negative beliefs by forcing you to reflect on your successes. No matter how minor they seem, slowly, page by page, I was building a documented, factual record of my own competence. Whenever that feeling of being a fraud started to creep in, I'd open the notebook. My feelings would scream, "You're a failure." But the evidence in my hands would say, "On Tuesday, you helped the new hire fix their coding issue. On Friday, the director said your analysis was spot on. You are not a failure. It's hard to argue with your own handwriting." The second step was a complete mindset shift. I stopped focusing on the vague goal of being confident and started focusing on the concrete goal of getting better. I started thinking of it like learning to play the piano. You don't show up to your first lesson expecting to feel like a concert pianist. You expect to feel clumsy and awkward. You don't focus on confidence. You focus on practicing your scales. Get better note by note, and eventually the confidence just shows up as a natural byproduct of your skill. So, I began treating my job like a series of piano lessons. I didn't know how to do something. Instead of panicking, I'd tell myself, a tricky part. I just need to practice this some more. I started asking more questions, sought out training to build my skills. When I gave myself permission to be a beginner, the pressure to be perfect vanished. And in its place, a quiet, sturdy competence began to grow. If this is resonating with you, and you've ever felt like an imposter, let me know in the comments what your biggest struggle is. You'd be surprised how many of us are fighting the same battle. The final step was to change my relationship with failure itself. That disastrous presentation felt like a verdict on my self-worth. This technique was about turning that verdict into data. I took out a piece of paper and deconstructed the disaster. What went wrong? My notes disappeared and I had no backup plan. What could I control? Could have had a printed copy of my key points. What did I learn? I learned that memorizing a script is fragile. I need to know my material well enough to speak about it flexibly. By analyzing the failure objectively, I stripped it of its emotional power. It was no longer a story about my inadequacy. It was a lesson in preparation and adaptability. This is about taking responsibility for your role in a failure, not to blame yourself, but to empower yourself to make changes. I started doing this for every mistake, big or small. Typo in an email wasn't a sign of my stupidity. It was data telling me to slow down and proofread. A misunderstood comment wasn't a social failure. It was data on how to communicate more clearly. Failure stopped being a monster under the bed and became a teacher. It didn't happen overnight, but brick by brick, using this system, I built something new. The terror has been replaced by a calm, quiet self-belief. I still get nervous before big presentations, but it's the buzz of excitement, not the dread of exposure. I know that I'm not defined by my last success or my last failure. I'm defined by my process and my resilience. Confidence isn't some magical trait you're born with. It's a skill you can build, a system you can practice. It's built on the evidence you collect, the competence you develop, and the failures you reframe as lessons. You don't have to wait to feel confident to start building it. You can start today with one small piece of evidence. If this story helped you, please consider subscribing for more practical ways to build your career and your confidence. You don't have to feel like a fraud forever. You have the power to build your own unshakable self-belief. Start now.